The knock didn't come like most do. It was slow, heavy, the kind of knock that don't ask, it warns. I had just poured a measure of coffee and was watching the storm roll in from the east. September on the plains always brings thunder with a memory. I figured maybe it was a lost ranch hand or some poor soul broke down on the cattle road. I weren't expecting 7 of 'em, and I damn sure weren't expecting what came next. She stood at the front, tall and composed, a wide-brimmed hat soaked and low over eyes that had clearly seen more than they ought. The 6 others, her sisters by the look, hovered behind her, drenched and quiet as shadows. The tall one, Tessa, I'd later learn, spoke first. "My name's Tessa Boone. These are my sisters. We've come from Dry Trace. Pa's dead, and we got nowhere else to go." I didn't speak right away. I couldn't. It was like hearing thunder when the sky's clear. Didn't make sense. Dry Trace was near 40 miles north, and last I heard, Samuel Boone still ran cattle and a silver claim on the western ridge. Hell, I'd bought a mule off him 2 springs ago. "Your pa's dead?" I asked. She nodded once. "Murdered. Day before yesterday." I stepped aside and let him in. Not because I knew what was right, but because the way she said that word murdered, flat and hollow, did something to my gut. The girls shuffled in, boots dripping mud across my pine floor. Tessa was the last to enter, and just before she did, she turned to me and said, "All 7 of us are yours, if you'll have us." I swear the wind stopped howling outside when she said it. It weren't a flirtation. It was something older than that, like a blood pact. And I knew in that instant I was no longer the only one living under my roof. I fetched them blankets, what food I had, and stoked the fire until it danced high. They ate like they hadn't in days. The younger ones dozed off in bundles on the floor, but Tessa stayed awake, watching me. She said, "You were Pa's last insurance. If anything happened to him, he told us to come here. Said you were the only man left who didn't lie for land or shoot for gold." I snorted. "Your pa always gave me too much credit." Her face didn't move. "That's why he trusted you." I poured her some coffee. She didn't flinch at the bitterness, just looked out the window like she could see something coming that I couldn't. She said, "Pa got mixed up in something. Something he shouldn't have." "What kind of something?" She didn't answer right away, just pulled her shawl tighter and stared into the fire. "I'll tell you, I promise, but not tonight." I should have pressed her. I should have demanded the whole truth right there. But something in her tone told me she'd already paid dearly to bring what little she had. That night I didn't sleep. Not really. I sat in my rocker with my rifle across my lap, eyes fixed on the flickering lamplight and 7 sleeping shapes on my floor. The house had been so quiet, I forgot what it sounded like when others breathed under my roof. I thought about Samuel, about what he might have found that got him killed. I thought about the words Tessa said. "All 7 of us are yours, if you'll have us." And I wondered what the hell I'd just let into my life. I woke to the sound of someone rummaging through the pantry. My hand reached for the rifle before I remembered. Tessa, the Boone girls, the storm. It wasn't a dream. She was standing there, barefoot in the kitchen light, one hand holding a biscuit tin, the other braced on the counter like she hadn't slept a full hour. Her eyes met mine, and I swear They held the weight of something ancient. "You always sleep with that thing?" she asked, nodding toward my rifle. "Only when I got strangers in the house," I said, but my tone softened. "Hungry?" She nodded. "Always." We sat at the table in silence, chewing dry bread and drinking yesterday's coffee. I expected her to avoid the truth again, maybe spin me a half story, or ask for help without saying why. But she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn pouch. She set it on the table like it was a dead man's heart. She said, "Pa found something. Didn't tell nobody but me." She undid the leather ties and spilled the contents. Not dust, not nuggets, but clean pressed flakes of gold. Refined. Someone had already smelted it. My heart slowed, then raced. "This ain't natural," I said. "This was done in a furnace. Where'd he get it?" She looked toward the girls still sleeping by the fire, then back at me. "You know that dry creek runs through your west pasture?" "Yeah." "Well, a vein runs under it." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. "Pa found an old survey map tucked in a rail company ledger. Showed a claim from back in '58, abandoned and buried by a flood. That gold came from there." I shook my head. "So why didn't he register the claim? Why come to me?" "Because he did try. Went to Marcus Finn." Now my stomach turned. "Territorial claims inspector?" I asked. She nodded. "Pa trusted him. Gave him part of the map. 3 days later, Finn's men showed up at night. Tried to burn the barn down with us inside." I gripped the rifle tighter. My home felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were listening. "You think Finn's coming?" I asked. She joined me at the window. "I know he is." I didn't say anything, just watched the wind stir the dry grass and felt the weight of that pouch still sitting on my kitchen table. There was enough in it to buy a ranch 10 times the size of mine, or start a war. "I didn't come here to dig," she said softly. "I came here to stay alive." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw that she wasn't just afraid. She was angry, determined, and for reasons I didn't understand yet, she'd chosen me. "All right," I said, "but if you stay, we do this my way." She nodded once. "Your way." I didn't know then that my way would soon become a line I couldn't walk back from. The Boone girls weren't just refugees. That gold wasn't just metal. Tessa, she wasn't just someone's daughter. She was about to become the spark in a fire I never meant to start. The next day came heavy with heat, though the clouds still hung low like they were holding back something foul. I tried to act like it was any other morning, fed the horses, checked the fence line, gathered eggs, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the kind that creeps up your spine before the shot's even fired. Tessa kept to herself, tending the little ones. They were quieter than children ought to be. No crying, no laughter, just silence and sidelong glances, like animals who'd learned too young what a predator sounds like. By noon, the quiet broke. I was chopping wood out back when I heard the dogs bark, short, uncertain, like they didn't know whether to greet or bite. I walked around the house, axe in hand, and saw 'em. 3 riders, slow moving, too clean for cowhands and too casual for lawman. The lead rider wore a tailored coat, dark green, high collar, and brass buttons that caught the sun. He sat tall, like a man used to being obeyed. I hadn't seen Marcus Finn in 5 years, but I knew him right away. He dismounted without waiting for an invite. "Well, I'll be," he said, smiling like a snake. Judson Pryor. Still breathing dust, I see. Finn, I said, not smiling, didn't expect a visit from the government today. The two men behind him stayed on their horses, rifles loosely slung but ready. They looked like the kind who'd never once paid for a drink with their own money. Hired guns. The kind who don't ask questions, just collect coin and kill when needed. Finn's eyes wandered toward the house. Got yourself a full barn, looks like. Heard you had visitors. I crossed my arms. Neighbors passing through. Nothing that needs a federal escort. He ignored that and reached into his coat. I flinched, but he only pulled out something small and gold. A pocket watch. Samuel Boone's. My throat went dry. Funny thing, Finn said. This was found a mile north of here, half buried near a wagon track. Thought maybe you'd know how it got there. I didn't blink. Can't say I do. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Strange how often you seem to be near trouble without ever being in it. I didn't answer. The girls were just inside, listening. I knew it. Finn stepped closer, voice low. If you see any of the Boone girls, especially the eldest, best you send word. This territory is too unstable to house fugitives. Could cause misunderstandings. They ain't fugitives, I said without thinking. His eyes narrowed. So you have seen 'em. I cursed myself. He'd baited me clean. Word is Samuel was sitting on land he didn't rightfully own. Surveyors found gold trace in his creek bed. Funny how he never filed the claim proper. Makes a man wonder. He was shot in the back, Marcus. That's what makes me wonder. Finn's jaw tensed. You accusing me of something, Pryor? I'm saying the land don't kill people. Men do. The tension thickened, brittle as dry timber. Finally, Finn smiled again and stepped back. Just trying to keep order. You know how unstable things get when folks start whispering about gold? He turned to mount his horse but looked over his shoulder one last time. Watch your back, Judson. You protect what's not yours. Sometimes it ends up costing you what is. And then they rode off, slow enough to make sure I saw the dust they kicked up. Inside, I shut the door and locked it. Tessa stood there, face pale, holding her youngest sister close. He had Pa's watch, she whispered. I know. Do you believe me now? I looked at her, at the others, at the gold still hidden in the cupboard. I believed you before he ever showed up. I didn't sleep that night, and judging by the quiet rustling in the front room, neither did the Boone girls. The fire burned low, casting tall, twitching shadows on the walls. Tessa sat by the hearth, wrapped in my old wool coat, staring into the embers like they might give her answers. At dawn, I went to saddle the mule and found footprints behind the barn, small ones. 7 sets, clear as day, winding from the edge of the woods to the back door. I'd been careful, thought I'd swept the area clean, but the rain had turned the soil soft and told every secret. I wiped my palms on my vest. Finn's men hadn't missed this. Sure enough, by midday they were back. Only this time, it wasn't just Finn and his 2 lapdogs. 6 riders came in slow, guns low but ready. One wore a badge, not a lawman's badge, not officially, some sort of personal emblem, like he fancied himself authority where none was given. Finn wasn't pretending anymore. He didn't even dismount this time, just sat in his saddle, hat tipped back, grinning like a man with too many cards in his hand. We're done with courtesies, he called.
I'm giving you one more chance, Pryor. Send the girls out, or I send my men in. I stepped off the porch, rifle slung but ready. You come in here, Marcus, and you better bring more than 6. You'll need 20 just to drag your dead back. He chuckled. I ain't looking for a shootout. Could have fooled me. His face dropped the smile. This ain't about the girls, not really. It's about what Samuel stole. There's claim paperwork now, filed legal, by me. That land's mine. That gold vein runs right under your pasture, and I aim to get what's mine. I spit. Funny how it became yours after you killed the man who discovered it. He didn't deny it, didn't even blink. Tell me something, Judson, he said, voice low. Are you ready to die for them? For a bunch of scared girls who will run the first chance they get? I felt the door behind me open, heard soft footsteps cross the porch. Tessa stood beside me. I won't run, she said. Finn studied her. Ah, Miss Boone, I was wondering when you'd show your face. You're not getting the map, she said. He tilted his head. What map? The one you killed Pa over. The one that proves you're a thief and a coward. The men on their horses shifted uncomfortably. Finn's voice turned ice cold. You think this ends in court? You think the law gives a damn what a bunch of orphan girls say? I raised my rifle an inch. Then maybe it ends right here. Finn stared at me for a long time. I could see him calculating. His eyes flicked to the porch, to the windows, to the woods behind the barn. He didn't like the odds. Not yet. Finally, he jerked his reins and backed his horse. You've made your choice, Pryor. Next time I come, it'll be with writs and warrants. I'll tear this house apart, and I won't be asking nicely. He turned, and the 6 of them rode off in silence. I exhaled hard. Hands were shaking. Inside, the girls crowded near the windows, whispering. Tessa was still on the porch, staring down the road where the dust hadn't even settled. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. I did. Sooner or later, every man's got to pick a side. She turned toward me, eyes softer now. You're not like other men. No, I said, but I got the same enemies. She smiled, tired but real. That night I barricaded every door and window. I moved the gold, dug a new spot behind the smokehouse, deep and dry. If Finn came back, he'd find fire, not fortune. And still, I wondered, how far would this go? How long could we hold? But one thing was certain. I wasn't standing alone anymore.
The days that followed felt like waiting on a fuse to run out, except no one knew how long the fuse was, or if the dynamite was already under the floorboards. Every creak of wood, every rider in the distance, every cloud of dust across the plain sent the girls into quiet huddles and made me reach for the rifle without thinking. They never asked to go, but they never asked to stay either. Tessa stayed close, not in a romantic way, at least not yet, but in a way that told me she no longer saw me as a stranger. She helped with the horses, mending a few shirts that had gone ragged from years of bachelor wear, and even started baking bread again, though the first few loaves came out hard enough to stop bullets. Still, I caught her sometimes, standing at the edge of the porch, looking north, toward the Capitol, toward escape. You think running is still safer? I asked one evening. She didn't turn. I think maybe we're not built for staying. I
stepped up beside her. Your father thought you were. My father also thought the law would protect him, she said bitterly. We stood in silence for a while, the prairie stretching out ahead of us like a promise neither of us fully trusted. Look, I said, finally, there's a way to make all this harder to undo. She raised an eyebrow. Shoot Finn in the face? I smirked. That's plan B. Plan A is marriage. She laughed. Not mockingly, but in that way folks laugh when you take a corner too sharp and they didn't expect it. Then she saw I wasn't joking. You're serious? I nodded. If we're married, I got legal claim to protect you, to keep you on this land. More than that, Finn can't say I'm harboring anyone. You'd be my wife. Your sister's my kin. She crossed her arms. That's an awfully convenient reason to propose. It's not just convenience, I said, voice lower now. It's the truth. I've been alone a long time, had my share of chances and let most of 'em walk. But this feels different. You feel different. She studied me, long enough that I started to sweat under my collar. Judson, she said softly, do you really want 7 women on your land, crying, cooking, singing, stomping around like they own the place? I smiled. It's already happened. I'm just trying to make it official. She chuckled. Then her expression shifted. We don't bring peace, Judson. We bring fire. You sure you want that? I looked her dead in the eye. I'd rather burn with you than rot alone. Tessa blinked fast, and for a second I thought she might cry, but instead she stepped forward, close enough for me to smell the flour in her hair and the soap she borrowed from the wash basin. She said, You ask me again when we're not talking strategy. You ask me like a man asks a woman, and I might just say yes. And then she walked inside, leaving me alone on the porch with the sun bleeding out behind the hills. That night, the girls made supper, fried potatoes and cornbread. Laughter crept into the house for the first time. Not forced, not loud, just enough to remind me that life was still trying to claw its way in. But beneath it all, I knew the quiet wouldn't last. Finn was out there, waiting, watching. And when he came back, it wouldn't be with questions. It'd be with guns.
The storm broke the next morning. Not rain, but riders. I heard them before I saw them, hoofbeats coming fast from the south, scattering the crows and kicking up dust thick enough to choke on. I ran to the porch, rifle ready, thinking it was Finn at last, and we were done for. But these weren't Finn's men. 6 riders came in formation, tight and disciplined. The lead wore a silver badge I hadn't seen in years, Sheriff Ethan Hayes. Behind him 2 federal marshals, the real kind, the kind who signed their names on paper and had the way to Washington behind their pistols. Tessa came to the door, eyes wide. The girls gathered behind her, a hush falling over the room like a prayer. I met him in the yard, heart hammering. Sheriff, I said. Judson, he nodded. Heard tell you had some trouble brewing out this way. I might have sent a wire or 2. He dismounted, slow and calm. We've been tracking Marcus Fenn for months now. Wire fraud, illegal land surveys, coercion of claimants, bribery. Wasn't until your message came that we had the final piece. I blinked. You're saying you already had a case on him? And we had smoke. You gave us fire. The marshals rode on past, checking the perimeter, rifles ready. It was the first time in weeks I'd felt like someone other than me was watching the tree line. Tessa stepped out onto the porch. Her face was a storm in itself, wary, weary, and just beginning to believe maybe the tide had shifted.
Hayes tipped his hat. Ma'am, Miss Boone, I presume? She nodded once. You here to arrest me? He smiled gently. No, ma'am. We're here to protect you, but we could use your help. She hesitated, then stepped forward and pulled a bundle under her coat. Weathered papers, yellowed at the edges, with hand-drawn survey lines and signatures. One of them, Samuel Boone's. This is the map he was killed over. And this, she reached into her boot and pulled a folded page, a ledger Finn gave to my father to sign, promised it was for a co-claim. It was a forfeiture. Small print at the bottom says Pa was surrendering all mineral rights. Hayes took it and scanned the paper. His eyes narrowed. Well, now that's more than we hoped for. He turned to me. You got a safe place to stash the girls? I nodded. Root cellar under the smokehouse. Hidden hatch under the salt barrels. Good. Keep 'em there till we're done. We're riding for Dry Trace tonight. If he's there, we'll have him in irons by dawn. Tessa stepped forward. You'll need more. Hayes paused. More? She pulled a small black book from her satchel, her father's journal. He wrote down everything. Names, dates, payoffs, even who took the bribes. You want Finn's whole operation? This'll give it to you. The sheriff took it like she'd handed him a torch in a cave. I watched her as she did it. There was no fear in her anymore, just fire, a resolve I'd seen flickering since the day she arrived, now fully ablaze. After the riders left, Tessa and I sat on the porch. The wind was cool, but her hand in mine was warm. You already sent for help, she said softly, back when I first told you. I nodded. Didn't figure we could face Finn alone. Just hoped you'd trust me before the law got here. She smiled faintly. I did, just didn't know it yet. The Boone girls sang that night. A soft tune, nothing fancy, but it drifted through the house like smoke from a clean fire, the kind that fills a home and not a grave. For the first time since all this began, I dared to think we might actually survive.
We didn't expect him to come back alone. No riders, no mercenaries, no badge. Just Marcus Finn, riding up at sunset like he owned the damn horizon. His horse looked half-starved, sweat darkening its flanks. His coat was dust-caked and crooked, his eyes bloodshot, wild. He'd lost something, maybe everything, but he still had one card left in his hand, and that card was desperation. I saw him from the porch, chewing on a pipe stem that wasn't lit. I stood, rifle ready, and stepped down to meet him. Tessa was inside. The others were in the cellar, just in case. She'd begged to stay above ground, said she wouldn't hide from him again. Finn dismounted with a grunt and staggered slightly. The man had run out of allies and whiskey and maybe his damn mind. Marshall come through Dry Trace last night, he said, voice hoarse. I heard, I replied. They tore up my office, took my papers, took my guns. Seems fair, I said, keeping the rifle low but ready. His eyes burned into me, but they weren't steady. You know what's under your land, Pryor. That gold vein ain't just a story. I seen it. I tasted it. He pulled something from his coat, another pouch of refined flakes, same as Tessa had shown me. He tossed it at my feet like an offering or a curse. That's what's at stake here, he growled. You could have had it all, but you chose her. I didn't flinch. Damn right I did. His hand twitched, just a little, but it was enough. The door opened behind me and I heard the click of a revolver. Tessa stepped out slow and calm, her father's pistol in her hand. She raised it like she was born holding it, both hands steady. Don't, I warned, without looking back. She didn't lower it. He's not leaving here without paying.
Finn laughed, a dry, broken thing. What are you gonna do, girl? Kill me in cold blood? That make you feel righteous? She took a step forward. No, but it might make me feel safe. Finn looked at her, then at me, and something changed. The fire left his eyes. He wasn't a snake anymore. Just a man caught in his own snare, too proud to chew his leg off. You think the marshals can protect you forever? He muttered. Gold draws worse men than me. You just wait. That may be, but it won't be you knocking next time. Hayes and the marshals rode up minutes later like they'd been waiting out of sight all along. Finn didn't resist, just stood there looking around like he'd never seen this land before. Hayes read him his charges: bribery, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy. It was a list long enough to drown in. When they shackled his hands, he finally looked at Tessa. You think you won? She didn't answer him, just looked past him like he was already gone. As they hauled him into the wagon, she came up beside me. Her voice was quiet. It's over. I nodded. It is. She looked at the house, at the pasture beyond, the prairie turning gold in the dying light. She looked at me. I meant what I said, she whispered. Back when we first knocked on your door, all 7 of us are yours, if you'll have us. I turned to her, heart heavy with something I hadn't felt in years. And I reckon it's time I started building a life worth having. And for the first time since the world turned upside down, she smiled like she believed there was a future.
3 months later, the ranch looked nothing like it used to. The fences were new, taller. The barn had a fresh coat of red. The old root cellar had been cleaned out and turned into storage for seed, not secrets. There was a vegetable garden behind the smokehouse, chickens running free, and a little dog the girls found half-starved near the road, who now guarded the porch like he owned the place. And inside that house, there was laughter. Real laughter. Loud, messy, spontaneous. The kind that bounces off the walls and settles into the wood. The Boone girls had made it a home. Liza painted flowers on the pantry shelves. May read books out loud every night, even if no one listened. Ruth taught the twins how to spin wool, and Annie, the quietest one, had taken to fixing everything I broke with tools twice her size. And Tessa, she never said yes out loud. She didn't have to. The wedding was small. Just Sheriff Hayes, the prairie wind, and a Bible we borrowed from the schoolhouse. She wore her mother's shawl and didn't cry until it was over. I cried first. She never let me forget that. The gold is still there. We didn't dig it up, not because we're fools. We had the claim secured proper, hired honest men to mark the boundaries. It's protected now, but we decided not to touch it, at least not yet. That gold nearly cost us everything. Now we treat it like a sleeping fire. Useful, dangerous, and only worth waking if there's no other way. Instead, we built something slower. Hayes helped get the girls legally registered under my name. No more whispers of fugitives, just a new family, strange and sprawling and strong. We hired neighbors to help with the cattle, bought another mule, and patched the well. The work never ends, but it's different now. Shared. One evening, as the sun slid low and the grass turned to honey, I stood on the porch with a coffee in hand, same as I used to, but not the same at all. Tessa came up beside me and leaned into my shoulder and said, "Funny, isn't it?" "What is?"
Pa always said the real treasure in this world was underfoot. I looked at her, at the land we stood on, at the house behind us filled with the thud of bare feet and pots clanging and someone singing off key. Maybe he wasn't talking about gold, I said. She smiled. Maybe he wasn't. I thought back to the day she arrived. Cold, soaked, half starved, fire in her eyes. And now here she was, wrapped in sunset light, barefoot, laughing, and she was mine. They all were. A man doesn't often get handed a second life, but when he does, he damn well better hold on to it with both hands and never let it go.